Hi, everybody. Really good to be here with you. Oh, inviting you to take a breath, adjust your posture, and enjoy the space and time that you have, that you've given yourself by coming along. I'm going to say a few things by way of beginning, in fact, about beginnings as well. And you can just let the words fall in, wash over.
All right, Zach, I
What
think
we
it's just people, there's some requests for you can speak up just a little bit more. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. In fact, I can also adjust my microphone volume. Better? Great. Thanks, everybody. You missed some seriously interesting things, but it's all good. It's coming back around. So welcome is what I was saying. Really warm welcome. Today in the Hebrew calendar is the second day of the month of Nisan, which also means it's the second day of the year, because Nisan, as the Torah says, is the head of the months. It's the beginning of the calendar year. We might think of Rosh Hashanah as the beginning of the year, which it also is. We have several New Years in Judaism. Classically, Rosh Hashanah is one of the New Years, the anniversary of creation. And Nisan, that we're just beginning now, is the beginning of the calendar year. So we're at the beginning. We're at one of the beginnings. And in the Northern Hemisphere, we're at the beginning of spring, another beginning. So in this sense too, this is what's moving me at the moment, how it is to be at a beginning. And so I want to bring this and invite you into this practice today to explore how it is to be at a beginning. Really, for me, it's a very regular experience. Like many times each day, it's like I wake up again. I've been somewhere else, distracted, forgotten, asleep, elsewhere, and I return. I come to, like, oh, I'm in some way at the beginning again, not just at the beginning of the calendar year, really any day of the year. So I think this is a rich seam of practice. What's it like to be at the beginning, and how do we begin in a skillful and healthy way? I was remembering as I reflected on this the last few days, this quote: it is difficult to begin at the beginning and not to try to go further back. It's difficult to begin at the beginning and not to try to go further back. I couldn't actually remember who it was from. I looked it up. It turns out it's from Ludwig Wittgenstein, this wonderfully insightful philosopher from the 20th century. So it's in the source sheet that will be shared. This lovely quote: it's difficult to begin at the beginning and not to try to go further back. And I relate to this so much that in these moments where I come to again many times each day, so often it feels like I can't just begin. Like, oh, there's something else I've got to do. I've got to first resolve this thing, or remember that thing, or sort that out, or first I've got to clear up this muddle of feelings within. I've got to get to this place before I can start. It's like I'm trying to go further back and, sort this out and that out. And of course, sometimes that's a helpful thing to do, no doubt. But sometimes it's just a kind of habitual feeling. So the invitation is to consider that maybe much of the time we can just begin. Maybe much of the time there's actually nothing we need to do before turning our attention to what's here. There's nothing we need to do before letting go, before softening, before opening our hearts. You're already here. You've arrived in this new moment. Let's begin. And we'll do this in practice shortly. See how it is to just begin, to just turn to something supportive without having to do anything beforehand. But I just want to say a little more first, that there's this gorgeous prayer you may know in the daily liturgy as we approach the Shema. And this whole prayer is like exalting the divine who forms the luminaries, who makes the lights. And there's so much beauty and poetry in this paragraph. So I've shared the whole thing on the source sheet. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, shine a new light on Zion, on Israel. May we all be merited to soon benefit from its brightness. Feels so resonant. But in particular, a line in the same paragraph that I'm thinking of now at the beginning of Nisan, that the divine Hamachadesh B'tuvo B'chol Yom Tamid, that every day, or Tamid, continually, the divine is renewing in divine goodness the works of creation. We are continually renewed, arriving at a new moment, beginning again. And, of course, the new moment rests on everything before it as well, stands on its shoulders. We're always held in a wider context. We're never doing it alone. We're always practicing in a context, held by something prior, something deeper, for better and worse. We're in a world that's on fire. We are post October the 7th, as Mark so powerfully reminded us. Sometimes I feel my system just ease a little bit in the acknowledgement of that. Yeah, we are in a context. We're also post Yetziat Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. We've come out of Egypt. We've received the Torah. All the profound challenges and also all the profound resources are here. They're already in the background. So we're not beginning in a vacuum. Actually, our beginning is always a kind of continuation. We don't have to do anything to make that so. It's already here. It's already the case. So with all of that behind us, with all of that around us, we can just begin. I said earlier, actually, that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. And it just occurred to me this year that it's so fascinating that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of, if you like, the real beginning. And yet the year, the calendar year, begins not then, begins in the middle, in Nisan, which feels like some kind of deep acknowledgement that actually we are always beginning in the middle of something. We literally begin the calendar in the middle of the year. So our practice invites us to begin again, right where we are, which is always, in a deep sense, in the middle. There's a kind of humility and trust here that I don't need to go further back. I'm already in it all. I can just turn to what's supportive here and now and let myself be supported by it. I don't need to give myself more to do. I can just turn to what's helpful right now. Turn attention where it is helpful right now. So let's do that together. Perhaps closing the eyes, Perhaps adjusting the posture, perhaps getting a little more upright, a little more balanced and stable. Perhaps getting a little softer as best you can, even as the skeleton is somewhat dignified. The muscles of the body can droop, can hang off the skeleton in ease. Inviting you to turn attention to somewhere within your immediate experience, the full breadth of your immediate experience, somewhere that feels supportive, somewhat grounding, somewhat lovely maybe. Doesn't have to be anything more than a mild grounding or lovely sensation. Maybe there's a tingle somewhere in the body, breath coming in through the nostrils. Maybe there's a pleasant sight in your field of vision if your eyes are open. Maybe there's a region of the body where it's just okay right now, like the elbow or the back of the neck, or one of the hands or feet, or the back of the knee. Maybe something else, but I'm inviting you to choose some particular aspect of your experience that's available to your attention in a not unpleasant way. It's like, oh, I can just rest attention here. I can just turn the inner gaze this way. Noticing if it feels like there's something you have to do first before you begin. Yeah, sweetheart, I really recognize that feeling. But maybe not. Maybe I can just begin. Anything important, I'll come back to it. But perhaps now I can just begin. Simply, straightforwardly, turning attention to some chosen resting place. Letting attention rest the way that we might put a blanket on a sleeping child. And each time you recognize that familiar experience of having been lost somewhere and coming to being returned in divine goodness, waking up again. See if you might this time just begin again, simply, straightforwardly, turning directly back to your chosen focus, whatever that may be for now. And how might it be to get a bit more intimate with whatever it is that you're turning attention towards? How might it be to let the connection between attention and its object get a bit more direct, a bit closer, perhaps feeling the kind of electricity of that connection? Really just being with what you're attending to. And all the while allowing, even as we come close, even as we get more intimate with what we're looking at, as best you can, doing so with openness, with receptivity, open to what comes from the other side, how the breath unfolds or how the sensations change. Interested, but without managing, controlling, just really attending the best you can. Continually beginning. And perhaps anchored by this focus of attention on its object, the simplicity of just continually returning to this, just this, whatever this is for you. This kind of anchoring supports us to let a spirit of allowing infuse the whole of the background of awareness too. Not just allowing what we're observing, but allowing what's around, what's in the background, what's above, what's below. Inviting the space to soften, grounded in your chosen focus. Inviting the space to soften just as much as it wants to fall open just as much as it wants to. Allowing, allowing what's here. The clarity and the mystery of that. beginning again without having to get anywhere else first, right where you are. God is there too, in divine goodness, renewing. Thank you, friends, for your presence and your practice.
Thank you so much, Zac. What a wonderful practice. Let's seal it together with the opportunity. Oops, what happened there? Opportunity to opportunity for those who are in mourning or observing a yard site to recite the mourner's Kaddish, or if it's your custom to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, please stay present for those who are. You can put the name or names of anyone you're honoring today in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. And if you are doing so, please join me by rising in body or in spirit. And you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yama, Divra, Chirute, V'yamlich Malchute, Chayechon, V'yomechon, Uchadye, Dekol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Vizman Kari, V'imru, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi
Yehi
Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Mivarach,
Mivorach
Le'olam
Olam
Ulamei Amen.
Leolaya.
Yitarach, V'yishtabach, V'yita'ar, V'yitramam, V'yinaseh.
Rabba Mivorach
Yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei
Rabba
Tekudsha, B'rifut.
Birchon.
La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, shush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amuran ba'alma v'imru, amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemayim, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen.
Amen.
V'aseh shalom b'mromav, v'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al
Yosef
kol
Shalom
Yoshvei
B'Mama,
Tevel,
Yosef Shalom
v'imru,
Aleinu V'Kol
Amen.
Israel V'Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'Imru. Amen.
amen. Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks to our teacher today, Zac Newman of Hamakom in the UK, for leading us beautifully as always. To each of you for being here, to Jordan Pollock for holding our space. And if you're leading us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll be led in practice tomorrow by Rabba Mira Neshama Weil. And on Friday, Rabbi Margie Jacobs will lead us as we sit into Shabbat. Just a note, I forgot to mention at the start that next week we'll be meeting Monday through Thursday, and we'll be led each day by Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, who'll be leading a special series, 4-session series, to help us prepare our inner life for Passover, from constriction to expanse. And those sessions are going to be extended by 15 minutes. So the meditation will go until quarter after the hour. We'll end with Kaddish as usual, followed by our 15 minutes of conversation about the teaching. So there'll be a little bit more expansive opportunity for practice next week, Monday through Thursday, as we prepare our inner house, clean out our inner house in preparation for Pesach this year. So very much hope that you can join us for any or all of those sessions. So you're welcome to stay on to continue to sit with us, or if you have a question or would like to engage in the conversation with Zac, you're welcome to put questions in the chat. Preface it by writing question if it's a question, or just share your reflections on your experience today. As always, Zac, really so beautiful. Thank you. And sometimes when I think about this meditation practice, it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple, and yet it is challenging. And it's not, I don't think it's just challenging because for those of us who may be distractible, have a hard time focusing or concentrating, but that there's something that's hard about being in the present. And this, I just felt like you really like brought this into sharp focus today with this focus on beginnings, right? That beginnings are hard. And there's this, the quote is great. And there's also, in our tradition, this phrase, kol hatchalot kashot, that all beginnings are hard. And I think it's related to the word it's in the narrative in the Torah about the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai in Exodus 19, where God says, Va'ata, now. And Rashi's comment on that brings in that phrase, all beginnings are hard. And you alluded to this when you said the practice of resisting or surrendering the impulse to go further back is humbling. What occurred to me when you said that, it was, how is it humbling? But my understanding of what you were saying, and tell me if you meant something different, or maybe you want to elaborate on this, but that it can be frightening to be in the present, in the beginning, in the unknown, because we're letting go of control in a way that being in the past or before the beginning gives us that illusion of control. It's the known, right? And then the future, of course, is also problematic in that way too, since we don't have control of that. But especially the present takes us out of the driver's seat. And there's a lot of midot, I think, involved in that. Trust, bitachon. So I guess I wanted to, I'm bringing this up because it feels like it can lend itself to also a practice of self-compassion. Like, of course it's hard to stay present. Of course it's hard to begin. It's frightening. Not so easy to release control.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. I really relate to and echo that deep, deep compassion. That it is hard. It is really hard. It sounds so simple, and it maybe because it sounds so simple, it's all the easier for us to give ourselves a hard time
Right.
about not finding it simple.
Right.
Because it's like, I should just be able to begin. I imagine that everybody else does that. They just say, I'm going to do this now, and then they do it. But me, it's like, whoa, all this other stuff. And yeah, it's deeply hard. And there are things we can do that make it easier. There are profound challenges and there are profound resources. And we can grow those resources in tiny, tiny, tiny ways, like every moment that we just begin, that we just show up for a second or half a second or whatever's smaller than half a second, just to turn into it for a moment. Like that's something, getting the heart, the system accustomed to being here. Challenging and incredibly beautiful as that is, such a mixture. So I totally agree, I really do. And yeah, there's a kind of humility about allowing it to be hard. Not saying, oh, I need to be present all the time. Also not saying, I'm never going to try this because it just seems too difficult. I'm going to prefer to write the whole thing off than actually wake up for a moment and realize, oh my goodness, I'm not spending most of my life in this degree of vitality. Sometimes it's like, oh, I prefer to just avoid that altogether, because otherwise I realize that I can't be here all the time. But that seems a shame, you know. It's like we can be there for a bit, we can enjoy it, we can. And so I guess that's part of what I had in mind by humility. Also some sense that, like, when I try to begin again, when I have these moments of like, oh, I've lost the thread, I don't even know what the thread was, but I lost it for a bit. And now I feel a bit decentered, a bit ungrounded, I don't know where I am, and I'm finding myself in a new moment. It's a very common experience for me. Sometimes it feels like before I can begin again, before I can just turn to what's supportive, before I can lean on my resources, it feels like I have to answer every question in the universe and take care of everything. And there's a kind of inflation there, like I'm the, as Rav James Jacobson Mazels once said to me, I think he was quoting his own teacher, like I'm the general manager of the whole universe and I got to take care of everything. And it's like, there's a humility in being like, well, I'm in it. I'm not above it, looking at the whole thing, having to organize it all. I'm in it. I don't have to know it all. I don't have to sort it all out. I can just turn to what helps. And if it helps me, then it will also help other people inevitably.
It feels like it's really kind of a, without being judgy about it, it's a little bit of a barometer of our spiritual condition, to it, the extent to which we're able to rest in that in some way, whether it's humility or trust or whatever it is. And I also really appreciated that you said it, even if it's just for a second or half a second or a microsecond, right? That we touch into that. I was going to ask you a personal question, if I may. Just us and these 105 other people. So, when you're sitting, how often would you say? I think I know the answer to this, but maybe I don't. Like, I think it can be very liberating to notice that, when we're doing this practice, we're not in that state. At least I think we're probably not in that state most of the time. How much of the time would you say you actually touch into that beginning, that you're in the beginning, beginner's mind? How often does that happen? I mean, 99% of the time for you, probably, but I don't. But for me,
no, I'm really working on that
I'm at a lower bar than that.
No, I really appreciate you asking, because actually, as a teacher of meditation, one of the things I'm often most excited really to tell people about is just how wild it is in here, just how much distraction, just how much like mess and doubt and guilt and shame and busyness, and yeah, like so much, so much, really. And I've done so much meditation, like I, and I think that, it's certainly true that the more you practice, that kind of electricity that I mentioned, like you can stay with something a bit longer, you can just open to it and receive it, and there's a presence that's really exhilarating at times. But that's not where I am most of the time at all. In fact, the much bigger difference over the course of my practice is that there's just less judgment about the whole thing. There's less of a sense of my mind should be some robotic, consistent. I'm just like, oh, I've looked at it so much, like it's alive, it moves around all over the place. It's not going to stop doing that.
Right.
I can try to pay attention to something for a bit. That can be really grounding and centering. I can actually do that in any moment. How liberating. But I don't expect it to stay that way. It's going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to begin again.
Right.
And that's not because I'm something wrong with me or I made a mistake. It's just fluidity of life. Like, so yeah, thanks for asking. It's all over the place, and how wonderful, how rich, how full. I don't think I would want it any other way.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the honesty. And, that's been my experience with, most teachers of meditation. And part of what makes the best of those teachers is their willingness to share that. But I'm also thinking about how that, the wandering mind is not even necessarily, it's not a necessary evil. That is, that's something to tolerate. Maybe we can lessen the judgment about it. Like, I'm a terrible meditator. My mind is going crazy all over the place. I can't stay at this beginning or this moment. To lessen the judgment about it, like, oh, that's what the mind does. But actually, that there's a positive in that there's something, I'm glad my mind is doing that. My mind is functioning as it should, as it was created to do. It just needs to get anchored periodically in that, and in that, in the present, so that will affect how all the thinking that is going on outside of that. I think about like the juxtaposition of Shabbat and the 6 days of the week. If I think about that mind that's, off to the races, is that 6 days a week mind, and that touching into, that microsecond or the half second or the second, or maybe even, God willing, 5 seconds of presence, shifts things so that when the mind goes back to its wandering, it's actually not quite the same,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I really appreciate the way you laid that out, that it's reminding me that I think at the beginning of my practice journey, I had the sense that the direction of my practice would be to get ever more focused, that I was like a bit all over the place, and I would get tighter in, more laser-like.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think the direction of my practice unexpectedly has been to actually get much wider. I've not got less all over the place. I've got more all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
more space, more allowing, more falling open. And then exactly as you said, which I relate to so much. And when that openness actually becomes disorienting, it's like, okay, now I know what to do. I need to center myself. But I don't need to stay centered, rooted to one thing. That sounds pretty heavy and constricted. And I just use that when I need to ground, to anchor, and then I can let go again into the boundless, beautiful expanse of being.
Mm.
And when it gets too much, okay, I center again for as long as I need to, but only for as long as I need to. And then, falling out again. How lovely.
Wow, that's really beautiful. All right, we have 2 minutes. I'd like to, I think that your offering on Sunday is so amazing. I want to share a little bit more about that. While I'm getting that, there was a question that is an interesting question in terms of Jewish legacy, or the legacy of our people, which has to do with Jewish attachment to the past and anxiety about the future. That may also contribute to what makes this hard. That there's so much focus on remembrance and and being connected to the past, that even though there is plenty in our tradition, as you're lifting up about being in the present and anchoring in that in beginnings. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but about Jewish culture, culturally, our predilection to that makes it difficult for us.
Yeah, yeah, I really feel that. And when I put it like that, I'm like, I don't want to forget the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's so rich.
Mm.
I don't want to leave any of that out.
Mm-hmm.
So my sense is that Zachor, remember, is all embracing. Like, it includes the past, it includes the future, and it includes that little sliver in between that's often the most energetic and electric, and which we often avoid, which is right now. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
let the whole thing be remembered, definitely the past, the horror of it, the beauty of it, the blessings of it, the tragedy of the whole thing.
Great. Okay, we're at the end of our time, but let me quickly share my screen just so people can see. And thanks to Jordan for putting the link in the chat. People can see that the program on Sunday in the States begins at 9 in the morning Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, 2 in the afternoon in the UK, and 4 in the afternoon in Israel. And just scrolling through the offerings, you'll see a lot of familiar names: Maria Margles, Mira Weil, who's leading us tomorrow, Danielle Katz, Kasia Steinbauer, our own Josh Fagelson, Natano Fuhr, Spika Krieger, and Jericho Vincent, who have led programs for IJS, and our own Miriam Klotz and Jenna Sadaka. So I just want to lift that up. What's an amazing opportunity for people who can join at least for part of the day on Sunday. So I'm going to say kol hakavod for putting that together, Zach, and hatzlacha rabba. Hope it goes. I'm sure it will be beautiful. Thank you so much for today, as always.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, everybody. Really wish you well.
Thank you. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, each of you. We'll see you tomorrow for practice with